I've just taken a step back and more thinking, and also taken the route of philosophy. So understanding and viewing the world differently, such as what we were just going into is a prime example of how the world works, that people are going to do what's in their best interest. And many times their best interest may not be in the best interest of either yourself or others.
Welcome to the Wild West Real Estate Podcast. And now, here's your host, Mark Hinteman. Today's guest is a multifamily investor specializing in value-add apartments in Indianapolis and other Midwestern markets. He's founder of Sonder Investment Pockets with over 200 posts. He's also the host of the Real Estate Experience podcast and the author of From Zero to 400 Units. We've had him on before. Excited to catch up. I want to welcome Sterling White.
Hey, welcome Sterling. To the Wild West podcast. Super excited about this. I wish I would have brought my cowboy hat, but definitely didn't have that during my traveling.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Excited to jump in, catch up to where you are now. We spoke, I don't know, probably 2 years ago.
But a lot has happened in that time period.
It has. All right. I know last time I spoke with you, you were in Indianapolis investing in the Midwest. Tell me where you are now.
Yeah, so now I'm out in Houston, Texas, where they say everything is bigger except the toilet where I'm at. So where I live.
Really?
Yeah, so I don't know if it's a defective toilet or what's going on. So, but yeah, so now live out here in the South. Truly have enjoyed it, and now investing out here. Haven't found any deals just yet at the moment, just due to where we're at in the economic environment.
Okay, so Texas goes big with everything except toilets.
Or the toilet that I have is probably the case.
Yeah. All right. Cool. How long ago did you move?
So I moved February of last year, in 2021, and it was in the midst of the pandemic, and I was starting to feel in a rut mentally, and I had these thoughts that, okay, well, why not move? And then that's when all the fear started coming. It's the fearful thoughts, Mark, that I had. And no, you can't move. Your family's here. It's uncertain. You've always lived here your whole life. And where I've had my biggest breakthroughs in life is when I've leaned into the actual fear and I made the move.
Oh, cool. What made you choose Houston?
So I was looking at Tampa. And also I was looking at Austin, Texas and Houston, Texas. Why those particular markets is I just felt drawn to those. And so Houston ended up settling on the cost of being able to purchase deals. Austin is much more expensive, the cost of living, and as well as the diversity that's here in Houston as well, has just really drove me here. And then also being there's an organization, entrepreneurs organization, that also drove me here too, of other entrepreneurs.
Okay. Yeah. I invest in Austin, and I know Houston is a huge market, isn't it?
Yes. Massive.
Oh, cool. So you've been there for a bit. You haven't transacted at the moment?
Not just yet. Still
working. What are you looking for? I mean, right now, we're in a kind of crazy, potentially transitional period in the economy and in the market.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
So steadily on the multifamily side, normally it would be minimum of 75 units, but here in Texas, since it's now my backyard, the minimum will go 40 units. And have shifted from more, I would say, 1970s built, so D to C class type properties and B minus to B locations, to more 1980s later built later built that are also in B locations. So more pushing to the suburbs and less intensive on the value add, because I'm seeing the delta between the heavy value add and then also the ones that have less, is pretty much shrinking. So it's not as much worth the risk.
The markets that I'm in, except for Austin, are pretty. There's a lot of older inventory, smaller inventory that are in that range of, they could be 10 to 45 units, 50 units, and I do that all day long in markets, in big markets like LA and Denver, and we're in Austin, but those tend to be more garden style, and I've always pictured that a lot of Texas is garden style apartment buildings. But is Houston more like a major city that's got that smaller inventory?
So from my initial research and reaching out to owners, I haven't gone that lower on the unit count, so I wouldn't have the answer to that. But from other investors that I've spoken with, is that they didn't find too much inventory lower than 5 or 6 units
Okay.
that's been built.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. How is Houston different than the Midwest in like Indianapolis? Are they very comparable, or is it a different
Mm,
play?
Entirely different play in out in Houston is you're able to get the best of both worlds. So the appreciation and also the cash flow, but the cash flow is not as high as you would get in the Midwest. But with the Midwest, you're not able to get as high as the appreciation. So it's
Right.
different to where in Indianapolis could be all into and looking at a price per door, let's say 55,000 per door, and then average rents on that would be anywhere between about 750 to 800. That rule of thumb just does not work in Houston, not even close.
Okay. Sure. Sure. Yeah. I've looked at some deals in Cleveland, where I grew up, and yeah, it sounds like that's. I mean, even those metrics for the cost per unit are comparable. But yeah, you get out to bigger markets. Yeah, obviously you don't get the cash flow, but it's a trade. It's not a bad trade, I think. I like the appreciation markets. I want to see demand.
Mhm.
Essentially, I think I want to be where there's a lot of job growth, income growth, wage growth, and population growth. That's going to be the drivers of your gain. It may seem like a little speculative, but there's actually, those drivers are powerful. They're pretty dependable as well if you do your homework.
Yeah. And what is your difference that you've seen between investing in California and then Texas?
you know California and LA specifically, it's probably a little bit similar to Houston, in that LA is a huge market, and I think there's 3 million parcels in the county of LA. So I always told everybody I could find a deal in LA any day of the week. Give me an hour, 2 hours, and I'll find something that's distressed mom and pop and that I could add value, and I'd buy it. It's worth buying. But Austin is a much smaller market. The inventory is tiny by comparison, not only because I think Austin's growing like gangbusters, but Austin had been like just above the million mark in population, whereas the county of LA has 20 million people.
Gotcha.
And then also Austin has bigger properties. They're more garden style, they're more 100 plus, whereas LA is just flooded with mom and pop, 12 units, 16 units, 20 units.
And are you able to get the yields and cash flow out there, or more so you would, let's say, break even or possibly get or be in the negative or even just a little in the plus, but you're more banking on appreciation? I've always wondered about the LA market when it comes to that.
Yeah, there are some that have cash flow to them. And I remember the good old days when I was buying, 5.5 caps in LA. But I think no, it's more of my strategy from the beginning was always positioning myself in up and coming, like trendy pockets where a lot of people were moving to, and there would be some hot neighborhood, and I would go to the outskirts of it because the hot neighborhood was already getting priced up and everybody wanted to live there. So I would go to the outskirts where the rents were a little more affordable, but you knew you were going to be impacted by the growth of that submarket, that little pocket, that neighborhood. I would find value add there and just get to work. And part of my strategy was a function of I was working, I was writing on the show Family Guy. I had income. I had the income that I needed or wanted. I was looking for smart investments.
Understood. And yeah, that would be a whole nother topic in itself, is just sharing your experience with writing on Family Guy. Very interested in that.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. So yeah, what are your thoughts? What are you doing right now, given what's happening? It's a little crazy.
Yeah, so have been selling over the years, and one of the deals that I'm working on, which is a 156 unit that bought 2 years ago, and it actually received $1 million more than on the 5 year projection.
Oh, really?
So
Oh,
under
nice.
contract on that, but unfortunately, during being under contract, one of the buildings experienced a fire. So now going through the insurance claim and seeing what we're able to get from that, and then go back to the buyer to negotiate. So we'll have to see how things end up panning out. And then also is have been doing some acquisitions, but haven't been as aggressive. And what I mean by acquisitions is have still nurtured relationships with owners, but definitely not as aggressive as I formerly was, because I do the direct to owner route, which
Okay.
is very intensive when it comes to the amount of work that you have to put into that. And I just wasn't seeing over the most recent year or so the return on time when it came to that.
Okay. So were you starting afresh, direct to owner in Houston?
Correct.
And you
So
had been doing that in Indianapolis or in Indiana?
yeah, in the Midwest, so doing it
Okay.
in Kansas City, Indianapolis, Louisville, and Lexington, Kentucky, and some other markets within Ohio. And then yes, came to here to Houston, pulled the list of the properties that fit the similar criteria in other markets, and then just started the outreach.
Okay. Just because I've never gone deep on this topic of straight to owner, could you tell us a little bit about your experience? Like, so you started doing that and you had success. And how do you do that? How do you build your systems to not make it a huge weight suck of your time with a lot of futile, dead end leads?
So one is bringing people on to help, so virtual assistants. So when I initially started this, so it was in single family, had 150 or so, and then transitioned to multifamily. And then that very first, one was going through the broker's route. So this was in 2017, and things really started to heat up in the market, and was just getting outbid, outbid, outbid. And then took a step back and said, well, why not beat the brokers to the punch and get the deal before it actually gets listed? And then that's when the concept came, okay, let's go now to direct. And then from there is originally was doing the driving for dollars approach. So that very first deal actually drove past this specific property that was on the south side of Indianapolis. The parking lot looked like an alligator's back. It was a very bland property. It was formally listed and then expired as well. So reached out, found out who owned the property. It was an LLC, and then who filed the LLC, and then was able to get their contact information, and then just simply picked up the phone and asked them whether or not they were selling. And it just so happened to be yes. And this was the last property that they just wanted out of the business, because they were shifting from being an operator to a debt collector.
Oh, so you had some good timing there.
Yeah, exactly. And then moving forward, what I do is just simply pull lists, because that's even more scalable. And then instead of me making all of the calls as if I formerly was, because I'll tell you is that it's a full-time job in itself. Is I was working anywhere between 35 to 40 hours a week just on the acquisitions alone. And that didn't even include other parts of the business. So easily working 70 to 80 hours per week from that, not well, acquisitions full time and then everything else. And so ended up hiring people because I was in the system. So built the system on the go, and then just started putting people to do all the outreach to these owners. Once someone raises their hand, there's some form of motivation. That's when the appointment gets set for me to then move it from there.
Okay. So you set up systems to handle that.
Correct. Yes.
What does your team look like at this point?
So the team is, I've shrinking it. So it's just primarily myself. And then we've got our property management, the property management company. And then I've got the partner Jacob. But as far as the acquisitions team, we pretty much slimmed down on that altogether.
Okay. And you said you're in sell mode, or at least with that one that one property where you had an opportunity to lock in a great return.
Yeah, and before that, sold the other apartments too. So sold two 80-unit apartment complexes before that, just due to receiving offers that couldn't refuse. And I'm trying to figure out, Mark, is that how in the heck are people buying these properties at these I'm looking at the numbers and I'm saying, how are they? I
Yeah.
mean, they must be coming up with some type of very cheap finance. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to figure it out.
Or no leverage, or are they just, sometimes we encounter, someone that's just at the end of their investing, journey, and they just want to buy something all
Just
cash
park their
and
money.
park their money. Yeah, where somewhere where it's safe.
Got it.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I get it. There's been crazy prices that things have transacted at in the
But are
last.
you starting to see a softening, Mark?
Yes, I mean, it definitely, properties are taking longer to sell, and I think we're seeing some softening in pricing. And yeah, it's taken a while. It didn't happen right away, but it seems like I guess people who had to sell, sellers who had to sell, just realized that they had two choices: have their property sit on the market for 6 months with no activity, or get it sold. And if they had any kind of motivation, they would start to give on price.
Gotcha. Yep.
That's interesting. Yeah. Any thoughts on where the market is right now? And so are you looking at any, you said more or less you put your pencil down on acquisitions
Yeah.
for the time being?
Yeah. Yeah. Put the pencil down. And where I'm seeing it really does vary on, because you got residential, meaning single family, then you got commercial, you got multifamily, then you got retail, and then you got malls. So there's all these different assets. And then
Yep.
and even within the assets, you've got D class, you got C class, you got B class, you got A class, and then you've got LA market, you've got Houston, Texas. So, but what I've been seeing or hearing overall from agents, as an example, is there has been a softening from the single family side, that formerly they would go to their buyers and say, hey, you've got to offer over listing, and then it would be multiple. But now properties are starting to sit a little bit longer, and there is not as much demand as there formerly was. But and then also on the commercial multifamily side, it's been hit or miss from what I've heard from investors. Some have said, yeah, the demand is still there, while others have gotten, let's say, BOVs, so broker opinion of value, and it wasn't what they wanted. But that could have been because their expectations are so high still, and still haven't came down within reason. So I've seen some softening in other areas. In other areas, there's still quite a bit of demand.
Yeah, it seems like it's market specific. And I had read that in the single family space, 15% of transactions, maybe you saw this statistic, that 15% of transactions last month were canceled in the single family home. I think there's the shock of some of these buyers seeing where interest rates are and just pulling the plug.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and others, investors, heard the similar, and these are larger assets, to where they've been putting down hard money, and the hard money has been millions of dollars that they put down, like $1 million plus dollars, and the deal didn't make that much sense, to where they said, okay, I'm gonna do away with the $1 million, because I'm going to have to walk away from this deal, because it really just doesn't make any more sense.
Wow, that's crazy. So let's see. Yeah, it's an interesting transitional time. I don't know. I know you're pretty young and impressive at how much you've accomplished in such little time. But going through 2008, there's some echoes of 2008 right now. But then also there's a lot that's different now than 2008. And I
A
think
pandemic. We didn't have a pandemic during that time. Yeah.
right,
Or what is it? A rent moratorium.
rent
So, but
moratorium.
yeah, but then
Sure.
still, would you say there's, from a human nature standpoint, there's still some similarities? Because isn't it what they say, that history doesn't repeat itself oftentimes, but it does rhyme? We're using.
It rhymes. Yeah, I think so. I went through 2008, and I kind of think where we are today was caused by 2008. And I think like it's been a while since I thought about this, but I kind of thought that in the early 2000s, the administration deregulated banks. And that led to banks being free to kind of do whatever they wanted. And there was almost no regulation. So there was, if you were in the mid 2000s, people were able to buy houses, get loans on houses that were 90% leverage and with stated income. You didn't have to provide any proof of income. So there were these fault lines in the lending industry that seemed like they were inevitably going to lead to catastrophe. So what that happened is there was a flood of buying with these very high risk loans. Then those loans they were getting sold at the millions. I remember I was living in New York and I was at a bar and somebody there was talking about, they were a mortgage broker. They were making loans hand over fist and not asking any questions. And he knew that they were headed for disaster, but he was making a fortune. He had made $1 million that year plus or whatever. But I think that caused this overbuilding and this frenzy. And then that collapsed, and it was so severe that it took down, Wall Street, Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns, and it plunged us all into this brutal economy. And a lot of builders went out of business. I remember there were whole communities that were empty, like empty houses that were just abandoned. So I think because of that, the pain from that, builders stopped building, and they were very slow. I'm sorry to go on about this. This is
interesting.
But I think a lot of builders were very slow to start up again after we came out of 2008. And that was combined with the millennial generation all reaching their household forming age. So there was this huge wave, the biggest generation ever, bigger than the baby boomers, was coming to age. And there was huge demand, but builders were skittish. So unlike 2008, where we were oversupplied, right now we have an undersupply. We've had an undersupply situation all throughout the teens because we never caught up to demand. And I think that, combined with a pandemic, combined with supply chain issues, material issues, we have a severe shortage of housing. And so I think right now, all of that is contributing to the inflation. And they're raising rates. The Fed is raising rates thinking that will bring down inflation. But I think, beneath that is a crisis of just supply. There's a huge demand that there's just, at the moment, there's no way to provide that demand, if that makes any sense.
Got it. Understood. Following that. Thanks for those insights. Because myself as an operator, I was a laborer and a construction worker during that. Well, I was a laborer at that time within a construction company. So I didn't have the actual experience as an operator and investing and seeing it from that angle. I just studied
you were on the
history.
Ground.
Yeah, exactly. I study history, and it's good to hear from others that actually saw it and was able to get those different perspectives and was able to experience it and go through it, because you've got that feeling from people and you're able to hear that and say, okay, I'm starting to get that same sentiment again.
Yeah, but it's different this time. I remember thinking like, this is a catastrophe waiting to happen. This bank that, I see this guy at a bar and I'm like, this is a disaster waiting to happen. And then, at the same time, those loans were getting repackaged, yep, and sent to Wall Street. And then they had invented this credit default swap concept that used insurance. And so all of Wall Street was somehow tied up in this like scheme, and they were making fortunes out of it, but all these loans were going to go bad.
And they were rated as A+, or they were rated as really less risky.
Right. Yeah. The rating agencies, everybody was kind of in on the game, and it was, everything blew up, obviously. And I think we learned lessons from that. And I think the lending industry is on much more solid ground today. I don't see real trouble brewing in the multifamily market. If you're in the multifamily market, But
unless a black swan event happens that just comes out of nowhere that we didn't. Example as the rent moratorium. No one saw that
sure,
coming. So you've got
right.
some investors that are ended up bleeding through that, and then now those properties may be up for sale. But that's what I would only see. Is I'm in the same boat as you, is that yeah, multifamily will continue to sustain, because with inflation going up, rents go up with that as well, which increase still steadily the value of the asset. But if some random black swan event comes that could affect that, that's where I see it really getting affected.
Sure. The interest rates where they are now is just making it really difficult, and prices have to come down. I mean, the interest rates, if they stay as high as they are, it will force the prices to soften. But I don't know that we'll have waves of foreclosures the way we did 12 years ago or whenever that was, 14 years ago. What else? What are you else are you so
So
you're more a seller today than a buyer.
and in addition to that, I've just taken a step back and more thinking, and also taken the route of philosophy. So understanding and viewing the world differently, such as what we were just going into, is a prime example of how the world works, that people are going to do what's in their best interest. And many times their best interest may not be in the best interest of either yourself or others. And
Right.
then at its core is let's look at an example. So, and won't go too far, of course, but let's say you're in a room with the president, Mark, and they say that they're going to put sanctions on. Let's say you've got investments $1 million into a medical company, so stocks, and but the president says he's going to put sanctions that could affect that investment that you have, and it could potentially drop by, let's say 30-40%. In that case, what would you do with that investment?
If you got a tip or a heads up that they were going to put sanctions on that,
Exactly, and it would affect your investment.
wouldn't the thing be to consider selling?
Exactly. Well, you, my friend, just committed insider trading.
Oh,
So
oh,
that's
really?
what I mean, is just understanding those type of concepts, that, and it's asking the question is, well, is that it is on a high level considered corrupt, but then
Oh,
it's, well, if you're in that situation, you would do the same thing because you're acting in your best interest. So it's just understanding things such as that, and then
the
also
ethics of it.
yeah, exactly. And just asking questions about how the world works from that, and then seeing the world for, instead of how I believe it should be, how it actually is.
Sure, sure. Yeah. I think when you get older, I think you start thinking more philosophically. And here's my philosophical thought: is maybe your self-interest when you're young is probably a evolutionary way to protect you.
Mhm.
You've got to grow, you've got to make it to adulthood and reproduce. But I think when you hit middle age, and I'm there, you start not caring about, you find that you don't put yourself first, and it's nice. It's like it's not, I'm not the most important thing, and I don't need to be the most important thing in my world. You have kids, and then also, if you're this kind of person, you kind of think about, like, how can I make the world a better place? How can I serve
Yep.
other people? I don't need to serve myself anymore.
Yes, agreed on that. Yes.
Good. I like our little diversion down the philosophical
Yeah,
path.
we could go down rabbit holes. I would want to touch more on that, but yeah, it's down. Yeah, definitely past that we can go into.
Are you reading books about this, or what's the source of your philosophical musings?
So there's that, studying the Marcus Aurelius and the
Oh,
Epictetus, and so I
oh,
don't know if you've came across
Stoic.
yes, Stoicism, which is by far one of my favorite type of philosophies. Is from he's got a book which is Meditations, and if you guys aren't familiar with Marcus Aurelius, he was at one point the most powerful person on the planet. And this was way back when, where he was the emperor of Rome. But is this book was not meant to be published as an actual book. It was just his thoughts of just constantly reminding himself of, hey, people are going to act in their best interests, and just to not get bogged, not get too much into your desires of the flesh. So he was saying all these different things and wrote about it. And it's just very interesting to get those concepts and how a lot of what happened during those days way back when still apply to today. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And they were, at least that group was very enlightened way back then when there were barbarians kind of attacking their nation, their empire. But yeah, these guys were just, they were the mindset, the originators of mindset and just personal development 3,000 years ago.
Yeah, it's just how many of the human nature and how people operate is the same. And this is one question I have for you, Mark, is that you mentioned a little bit earlier that innately we have the desire or in a way to survive and then reproduce. But then in that is that question, is that all we're here meant to be here for? Are we meant to be happy if we're meant to survive and then we're constantly in this, what do you call that? Have this desire to keep growing and want more innately, but at the same time, if that's the case, doesn't that create unhappiness in that? And that brings back to, okay, we're just meant to be here to survive and reproduce.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess there's the self-interest that you're born with, and it's built in your brain to serve your survival. But, at some point, that's where religion came from, is, your spirituality. What's the more that's out there than just surviving and reproducing?
Yeah, there we go.
I don't know that I have the answers to that, but I like going down the road.
Yeah, it's one question brings up and then another question comes up and then another question comes up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I like, your stoicism. Those guys were brilliant. And I think the one thing I heard about Marcus Aurelius is that he was the most powerful man in the world. He was the ruler of the world, and he stepped down. Like, he voluntarily said, I don't need this. Like, whereas it's very rare that someone doesn't grab and cling to power with everything that they've got.
Okay, yeah, I'll just stop it there. So, yeah.
All right, well, cool. Let's go into multifamily psychotherapy. What's a trait you possess that has served you best, both in real estate and in life?
I'd say the ability to just figure things out, and that is having more of a growth mindset, that if there's a challenge or a problem in front of me, instead of, whoa, it's me, blaming someone else, I'll just say, okay, well, there's a challenge. Now, what are you going to do about it? You got to figure out a way. Either I will adapt and pick up the necessary skills to solve the problem or challenge, or find someone to help with it, or they would solve it all together.
Awesome. That's a great answer. What's a trait that you think holds you back?
I'd say is the action taking, which is a double-edged sword, because I could use that towards the first question. And that is, I look at it as if I'm Juggernaut from X-Men.
X-Men,
And
okay.
there's a wall in front of me. And let's say that's the challenge. I will keep running into that wall until I break through it. And then I've got all the debris and all this mess behind me. And so there's that, where instead I could have just took a step back and actually thought, okay, well, I can build a ladder over this, or I can actually go around it. So that's what I would say is it's a double-edged sword that holds me back oftentimes.
Sure. What's a daily habit that brings you the most benefit?
Working out.
Working out?
Yeah, consistently. So that's anywhere between 5 to 6 days a week. And then also on top of that is just taking some time out today to just think about the world, think about life, think about the business. And that's what I've enjoyed, just time away, just to sit down and think.
I love that. Yeah, definitely. If you were to pass on some advice to your younger self, what would it be?
I would just tell myself it's okay. The uncertainties and everything that you're experiencing, as long as you keep going and have faith, you'll be completely fine. And I believe during that time I don't know if myself would have listened to me today, but I would just say is that, hey, Sterling, keep doing what you're doing. As long as you keep putting in the work day in and day out, it will pay itself off. You may not see the results now, which you just got to have the patience. and it'll and just consistently do that over time. You'll see the results.
Yeah, that's great. And I add to that, like, and as you're banging your head against the wall, against a difficult problem, try to enjoy it.
Yeah.
You only go through this once, so it's not that bad.
Yeah, which thanks so much for that, Mark. I'm glad you told my younger self that, because I definitely needed that.
Cool. Are you ready for question round?
Yeah, let's roll.
Let's do it. The book you've recommended most over the past year?
Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, the founder of Nike.
Yeah, awesome. Do you have a favorite quote?
We become what we think about.
Who's that? Is that a Stoic? I was wondering if you'd pull out a Stoic philosopher.
That is Earl Nightingale, but it probably stemmed from some form of Stoicism. But yeah.
When was Earl Nightingale? Like, is he like back in the 40s, or is
he's 1980s.
He's 80s. Okay. Oh,
right awesome. Right around the time the Zig Ziglars, or right before, I would say right before the Zig Ziglars, and probably right after Norman Vincent Peale's.
Okay.
And Napoleon Hill's.
Yeah, I stumbled upon, my mom had these like old tattered Norman Vincent Peale books in her room. And I remember like picking them up and reading them. And that was I was literally in like 4th grade. And wow. That was my introduction to like, really, like, you can change the way you think. And I kind of got fascinated by it.
Norman Vincent Peale takes it way back.
Definitely. He was he was talking about Ralph Waldo Emerson. Like, he was going back into the last century with his, like, the mindset people he was talking about. What was your favorite movie when you were 15?
What? That's specific, Mark? Oh, very man.
Specific.
When 15, I couldn't even, I couldn't even think back to that. I would say a recent movie for me was, and because I enjoy documentaries, was Free Solo.
Oh, I loved Free Solo. That's great. Yeah.
I got anxiety actually watching that, but yeah.
Who didn't? What was that guy's name? Alex Hinault or something?
Yeah, it was Alex something, but that's quite a feat for someone to do, and really just admire not only the courage, but also his tenacity around everyone telling him not to do it because of the risk associated with it, and him still doing it. And then also to see the technique behind that when he was doing, what was it? He called it a chop kick as a way to bridge from one way to the other is so technical.
And insane. With no
harness.
No harness. That is completely crazy. What was your most awkward year?
I'd say my most awkward year was my freshman year of high school, because I went to 5 different schools. So just the first semester. So that was a pretty awkward year, because I couldn't get adjusted to anything.
Really? That's crazy. Aside from real estate, one thing you could spend all day talking about?
Philosophy.
Philosophy. Okay. Makes sense. What is your most impressive, totally useless skill?
Bird watching.
Bird watching.
I can. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm an expert with identifying birds or anything, but that's just one of the skills that I picked up in learning a difference between a male and a female, their different flight patterns, their different calls. So that's one useless skill.
Well, if you're ever out in LA, come over to my house. My wife is obsessed with birds, and we have probably right now.
I hear some birds now.
Can you hear those birds? We probably have 40 birds in our yard right now. And she
different birds too?
She attracts them. Yeah. She puts out like different seeds for all of them, but totally obsessed with birds.
I don't blame her. It's definitely a great one. And once you've experienced it, because this was a class I took during college, it really just opens up your perspective, and that all these different birds, all these different calls, and all of that. And yeah, it's just a whole different perception and world.
If you could have the answer to any question, what would it be?
Why are we here?
That's a good one. And lastly, when are you happiest?
I am happiest when, I'd say, putting deals together. I really enjoyed that. And then also just reading autobiographies. So books of people who write about themselves. One that I'm actually finishing now is the one by Bryan Cranston.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, really good book. And
Really?
right
I didn't know
before,
he had a book out. I know him somewhat.
yeah, it's very recent. He published that, and then right before that, I read the book on Julius Erving, so Dr. J.
Oh,
Really
Dr.
great book.
J. Dr. J was my my favorite player back in early 80s.
Gotcha. Can you dunk, Mark?
Can I dunk? I cannot.
Not yet.
Yeah, definitely. That dates me, but Dr. J was the guy, the Sixers. Finally, where can listeners reach out to you?
Yeah, so one is you can visit sterlingwhiteofficial.com. One more time, that is sterlingwhiteofficial.com is a way to reach out to me. Or also, if you're on Instagram, it's the same, Sterling White Official. Here at any point to point you in the right direction with any questions that you happen to have, is just share my personal experience and hope that you're able to get value from this, which we did shift this a little bit more over to the Mark podcast, just a tad bit.
Yeah, sorry about
me
that.
interviewing you. Oh no, that's perfectly
Yeah.
fine.
No, but always great to talk to you. Yeah, good luck with your move to Houston.
Get that toilet adjusted.
Look forward to get that bigger toilet. Yeah, and yeah, look forward to staying in touch. And yeah, best of luck navigating whatever it is we're going through.
Yes, exactly. Likewise to you too, Mark.
All right, thanks, Sterling. Thank you for joining us for the Wild West Real Estate Show. If you like what we're attempting to do here, please subscribe so we can continue sharing these with you. And if you want to check out our website, it's quantumcapitalinc.com. You'll find podcast episodes as well as multifamily properties we're looking at and how you could potentially participate. Look forward to seeing you guys soon on the Wild West Real Estate Show.